and tie, and not to say Your Honor. You know?
Good evening. This is the Rutland Town Planning Commission, and this is September 14th. Welcome, everyone. We've got a full house here. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have with us tonight Jerry Stearns, Sherman Hunter, Annie Kane, and Dana Peterson. We've got Howard Burgess and Norm Cohen and myself, and everyone's a voting member this evening, as it stands right now. First on the agenda tonight is approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Seconds. Could we add the minutes got dropped off because I used the same template I used for the special meeting. So could we add the minutes? And there should be copies on your desks if you haven't seen them yet from August 3rd and the 17th. We actually, I think, need to review at some point, I guess the next meeting, the minutes for July 13th. But let's go with the 3rd and the 17th this evening. If we could, if the maker of the motion is open to that.
Of course. Second.
Okay. Any other?
Excuse me, whoever seconded the motion has to indicate.
Sure, two of us spoke at once.
Mhm. So it was a tie, so
So it's whatever. It's second anyways.
any other discussion? All those in favor of the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, doesn't look like we have any public joining us in person or by Zoom. And we can skip over new business. We really don't have anything brand new. But if we go down to old business, there's some news on that. I did contact Kevin Brown, the town attorney, about the select board's request that we look into adding something about long-term rentals, not adding it to the short-term rental ordinance, a separate entrance ordinance. That is not possible because it's not allowed by the state. The state tells everyone in the state what kind of things they can legislate or make into statute. That is already covered. So it would be, we have no authority to regulate long-term rentals. And you know, it's part of the whole public buildings issue. They are public buildings. Actually, short-term rentals are public buildings as well. So that's that. The select board hasn't moved on any of this yet. We haven't even discussed what Kevin has said. The introduction, or what was that? What's the background? What's that? Purpose. Yeah, that hasn't been rewritten either. Remember, the select board talked about consolidating some of the things in there.
Mhm.
And our attorney's opinion about there was a request to make section 7 with the fines and the court appearances more clear. He asked to wait on that until we had better direction on where the ordinance was going. he said, why, I don't feel right spending the time giving you some advice on that. Until,
Until the select board has made a decision about the direction, is that correct? The select board, it's not on us, it's the select board.
yeah, and, you know, it's now a little more complicated than an up or down vote.
Right.
It's like, you know, at least several of the members really wanted to do something different with this ordinance with a long-term rental. So I'm not quite sure where they're going to go. They met Tuesday night and they weren't prepared to do anything. So, yeah, Norm.
Are they aware of Kevin? Have they received Kevin's opinion?
Kevin was going to write a memo to the select board. I don't know if he's done that yet. I think he's had some conversations with the chair. So that might be on the back burner for a little bit. Chairman?
So something you said concerned me. Did I cut somebody off?
You're good.
Did I cut somebody off when I just?
Yes, Sherman, he's over it already.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, finish, finish.
Okay. In something you said, reporting what the select board is doing, do I get the sense that without regulation of long-term rentals, that they will reconsider this ordinance?
I don't know. I don't know if anyone has the answer to that. Because the swing votes wanted some parity, or, not quite sure what they were after between, short-term rentals, long-term rentals. Don't do something, to short-term rental operators that we're not already doing, or just get everything down on paper, but we can't even touch it, the long-term rentals.
No, when you said something was forthcoming, it did occur to me that it was because they are public buildings, given their size and number of residents and that kind of thing, and that is regulated by the state.
And, Kevin keeps saying, and legislature recognizes that in many cases, short-term rentals are public buildings too. But they aren't anywhere in statute. So it passed, well, I think about 5 years ago, was his guess, the authority for municipalities to write some regulations concerning short-term rentals. So that's the authority that we have, that we don't have the long-term rentals. There's specific statute that says towns can do that.
With all that, we don't have anything going at the moment. We don't know if, it'd be another year before we can really see something coming together. The original hopes were to get something started, and it's not getting started. It's
Right.
not getting started in time to get it in for this year anyways.
For the ski season, or that's looking a little problematic.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll stay on top of it. Oh, yes, right.
So just based on what you said, it sounds like there is some state statute that covers long-term rentals, maybe not the way we want it, but addresses it and covers it. Is that?
Well,
You didn't say
yeah, I
that,
mean,
but-
it's probably mixed in with a couple different divisions and departments of the state that have responsibility over that. So if it's laid out, it's already laid out. What those rentals need to do.
So is there anything that is done at the local level to see that the landlords are adhering to those policies or those statutes?
There probably is. I don't know right offhand.
Oh, there is.
Other.
Well, I mean, just the way you said it was that we can't do anything because there are already statutes. And what I guess what I was trying to say is there are already statutes that covers this, and here they are, and here's where they are, and here's what's being done about it. And we haven't been able to do that.
Mhm.
I mean, I would like, if I was gonna respond, I would rather say, here's what's being done. And, I mean, here's what the state has there,
Mhm.
and at least point to it, and it sounds like it's not well defined under this heading of long-term rentals. It just falls into different areas.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think those operators of long-term rentals know where to go to
You know,
find.
the health officer is kind of the point of contact for tenants. So they, and this has happened, if people have issues as a tenant. And they contact the health officer who does some of the investigations and. But it's the health officer and the health department are the ones that basically do the enforcement.
So is that's not limited to long-term rentals though, is it?
That's what they're for, yeah.
Only for,
Yeah, they don't do. I mean, it's never been, there's no one's ever come to us and say, hey, I have a short-term rental, because. They're usually only there for a few days, so they're, it's, the tenants have an issue with,
yeah,
heating doesn't work and things like that, so that's where those issues are, yeah.
I mean, if you're really interested, Hunter, I mean, I can ask Kevin to pull all that together.
my guess is that's gonna be the question that comes back to us from the select board.
It's my hope that his memo, when he writes it for the select board, it's gonna be,
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
gonna cover most of that.
okay.
We'll see. What I had with him was a phone conversation. And some emails, and that's about it. Okay, we'll stay on top of that. Uh, Good comments. Next on the agenda, Norm asked for this refresher on the river corridors. So we're talking about segueing. This will be our next project. Putting together some river corridor and flood regulations. The ones that the town has now are outdated. There's going to be new FEMA maps coming out in the next 4 or 5 years, it looks like. And so there'll be some implications if we don't do anything, there will be implications to people who have national flood insurance right now, whether they can renew it or whether they can get new policies. And of course, that's subsidized by the federal government. So, and then, there's a number of reasons, which we'll go through. I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint here. Other financial reasons to do the river corridor part. So the new FEMA maps, that's playing out right now. There's nothing to see yet. But we'll stay on top of that. And Kyle Madash, who was here before from the DEC, who's still quite busy with the
Right.
flooding from July, will help us stay on top of that, as well as the river corridors. Tonight, I just wanted to go back and just go over what river corridors are and what an ordinance of that kind is trying to do. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Host.
They will automatically go there now.
not up on the big screen. This is the issue we had with the solar site footage.
Should be on the desktop. You should.
Yeah, it's on the desktop.
Click on it and then to allow you to share it from there.
You are screen sharing. So, I don't know, so yeah, this is the same issue. You want me to start over again, Bill, or?
Should let you do it. I'll take it.
There you go.
Shared now.
Oh. Our meeting. So we've got what's out there that is mapped and can be regulated now are special flood hazard areas. The river channel is in the middle there in the blue. And then what we're looking at is adding river corridors. And they, they protect what is needed by the river, the room there, and the floodplain functions. And this term is frequently used with river corridors is there's no adverse impact to what's being done. So you can see they overlap. The river corridor can overlap with a special flood hazard area, or it can, extend beyond it, or not as far as a special flood area. And so we'll go over why that is. Here's just a shot from Tropical Storm Irene and the Otter Creek. And the floodplain access is, you can see the river in the foreground, half hidden by the graphic. But the floodplain access is in the back of that, in the middle of the picture. And that's why, Brandon was hit mostly by the Neshabie River, but this is why Middlebury fared pretty well during Irene, because there was so much room for the floodwaters to extend beyond the river channel. It's a little outdated, but all of those dots are public assistance projects through, not sure when this started, but I think this is mostly Tropical Storm Irene through October 2013. So you can see it's happening.
That picture is Killington.
Yes, right. So, these disasters are happening all over the state, and probably a map now would be almost solid with some of the weather we've had. So here's the financial advantage of doing river corridors. And this is what makes sense to most municipalities. 75% when a disaster is declared and approved, there's always 75% funding coming from the feds. So it's that 25% that the state offers some carrots and sticks to municipalities. If you start on the left-hand side, so the local is the orange color. If you've done what it calls measures that it's looking for, the local share would be 17.5%. And throughout this graphic, it's using a $1 million recovery project as a reference. So out of that $1 million, a municipality would have to come up with $175,000. In the middle one, that's where a town joins NFIP, has a local emergency operations plan, local hazard mitigation plan, and road and bridge standards. Most towns do this, and Rutland Town does this. So its local share goes down to 12.5%. With the addition on the right-hand side of river corridor protections to those standards I just mentioned, it could go down to 7.5%. And the share out of $1 million would be $75,000. So that's the financial incentive of river corridors. And this is, this is be hard to see. This is just from a state website, and it's Rutland Town. Our rate is 12.5%. We've got everything but river corridors listed there. And we've got 30 structures in the special flood hazard area. That's just some general information they put up to keep track of who has what, and they do this for every community. So to get that extra ERAF benefit, the river corridors, they have some recommended standards, and they also include small streams and a 50-foot minimum setback from these small streams. And the map we have shows both the river corridor and the small streams. I'm going to get a better map for us to work with. The structures on there are just itty bitty dots. So, and then they're color coded, and you cannot tell what color they are because they're so small. Yeah. So we'll have a better map to work with there. And then we're looking at for river corridors, and probably the new FEMA mapping, including no new structures or fill in the special flood hazard area. This is a project that VPR did a few years back after Tropical Storm Irene. And it's kind of interesting. And hopefully, Bill, this is Brandon's numbers here for, this is all public. Well, this is a combination of all of the aid that they got. And unfortunately, let me try the link here. They oh, good. It's going to work. But they combine Rutland City and Rutland Town. Let's see. Just
It's not gonna show up on the screen up here, though.
oh, okay. Well, I can see it. No one else can see it. Okay. Oh, the numbers aren't very good anyway. Because they combine the two. But it was a neat little project for them to do. Get back. Okay. And these figures aren't the most up to date, but in the pie chart there on the right, disaster damage in Vermont from 2003 to 2008, 95% of it was for declared public disaster losses. And that's what we're talking about with this river corridor and the financial incentive. And there's a familiar picture on the left-hand side of Route 4.
Yep.
So floodplains and river corridors, they provide water quality, floodwater storage, like we saw in the Otter Creek, wildlife habitat, beauty, recreation, community identity, and public safety. what has happened in the past is that there's been this cycle of what people have been doing in and around floodwaters. There's a flood, there's injuries and property damage, and you follow the arrows. And so there's a reaction to that. There's fill brought in, there's berms put up, there's dredging, there's armoring with rocks. And so the result is there's less room for the channel to adjust. And actually you lose floodplain functions. And that means a lot of infrastructure is at an even higher risk. And, you know, that's what we have been doing. You know, that's been our pattern in dealing with floods. So why protect the river corridor?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Barbara,
sorry.
just a quick question, if you go back to the last slide. We're talking about a cycle, it's pretty clearly indicated on the title up there. That the purpose then behind this approach is to refrain from building anywhere that would go in the river corridor, thereby reducing the property damage that could result as the river or stream flows out of its banks. So what the whole purpose behind this initiative is, one, create awareness, two, create a sense of urgency, and three, to ask for community buy-in so that the whole community can accept these standards to protect individual homeowners as well as the town collective in terms of the risk, the financial risk that they would bear. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part. And then, you know, the devil's always in the details.
Sure.
What would be restricted, you know, it varies. And it's not an outright,
Understood,
not
but-
an outright ban.
Exactly, but it gives like setbacks. I mean, it's the same, there are guidelines in terms of how far you can build. That's the only restriction on individual homeowners' rights, so to speak.
Yeah, well, we'll see, maybe a couple other examples of where you can build even with a river corridor.
Right, I'm just saying that some of the feedback that we heard was that they didn't want people telling them.
Right.
I mean, Sharon Russell, I can remember saying, well, I don't want to tell anybody what they can or can't do with their land, but what we're just saying, this is the reason that I wanted to stop on this one is because it tells about the story. It has the cyclical arrows there, and it shows a visual of what's really happening in terms of the, excavator there and what is being eroded when the stream or creek comes out of its bed.
Mhm.
So it's a powerful image and description that would help people to understand that this is not something that the government is trying to do in restricting rights. It's a protection that the government is asking municipalities to adopt for everybody's benefit. Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that I had an understanding so that we're not barking up the wrong tree when we get to
Yeah.
talking with our constituents.
Yeah, so a little more visual and verbal description of river corridors. And some of the reasons why they do help. The river in the middle, when it's straightened, it becomes deeper and more powerful, more energy.
Is that the red line?
And more, the hash marks, and more destructive. And then if you go out to the river corridor, you know, the blue dashed lines on the two sides, there's more room for the river to move. And stream power and the erosive damage are minimized by doing that, as opposed to trying to keep things in a straight pattern and away from,
So the two houses on the right side could be in greater danger because they're actually, the lines run through those
they could
little
be,
icons.
they could be. Yeah, And a protected river corridor allows the river to move over time. And that's what all these blue
Yep.
little wavy things are. It's moving over time. And it's maintaining the slowest, less erosive path by doing that. This gets into it a little bit more. So on the left side, we've got what is called the meander belt. That's the two red straight lines. That's the physical space needed by the river to maintain and achieve being vertically stable and least erosive. The channel at equilibrium in the middle with the dashed lines, that's slower and less erosive, and is and is able to flood. You know, I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive here. You want it to flood. You want to disperse the energy. So you need to give it some room there. A straightened channel in the middle, that's too fast, deep and getting deeper and powerfully erosive. So the problem is future development that encroaches up to the edge of the meander belt. And you know, that tends to happen. People like to be near water of any sort. So as it gets closer, that becomes more of a problem. There's a squeeze there because the new structures will ask if there's some flooding. They'll say, hey, you got to take care of this for us. Our basement's flooded or whatever. So they will ask for things to be done that we just heard are not helpful in dealing with floods. And this bank armoring will prevent the channel from getting to that equilibrium that we're trying to reach. And over to the right, the channel is deep and getting deeper and too fast and highly erosive, the more you kind of do that squeeze. Just as a rule of thumb, the meander belt plus 50 feet to allow is optimal to allow for naturally stable boundary conditions, and including trees and rocks, and additional erosion hazards are minimized.
Is that 50 feet on each side of the creek or a total of 50 feet?
It's
50 feet from the
It's-
meander belt, isn't it?
yes.
Which is the red line.
So the river corridor would include, as I understand it, both the red lines and those blue lines outside of the red lines. And it's because you add in the meander belt to what they're, so.
The way I read it, Norman, is it's 50 feet on each side. Where those white arrows are. That space between the
Yes.
red arrow on the left and the blue arrow, the parallel blue arrow on the left is 50 feet. The
Yeah.
Same is true for the right side.
So it's like, you know, where they think, how much room the river needs, how much, you know, the calculation there, then they add 50 feet on each side,
50 feet on top?
to each side. Yeah. It,
The setback is for 50 feet on each bank of the river.
we don't really, you know, this is just this is more background. I mean, the maps show the river corridor with all of this baked in. You know, this
With the
is,
50 feet baked in already.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So here's the no adverse impact. Keep what works, protect the room remaining for rivers and their floodplain functions. And so no adverse impact also means don't cause damage to others, address the known hazards, protect people, investments already at risk, reduce public and private losses, and align with statewide flood resilience standards.
That's a great slide too.
No adverse impact for the special flood hazard area. You know, maintain that ability of floodplains to function, and no net fill. So when fill is brought into to a site, that's not a good thing, because that cuts into what the river can do naturally. So this no net fill, which is part of the no adverse impact, is that an equal amount of soil will be removed from that same site. So that's what that means. And also in the regulations, the state preferred regulations, the lowest floor should be at least 2 feet above the base flood, and that's in the special flood hazard area. We already have some regulations on that, but they are old, and the state has come up with a lot of other things it thinks will be helpful to add. No adverse impact in river corridors is protecting that room for the rivers and their functions. And don't build closer to the river than what's already there. So that would be a pretty key part of a river corridor regulation that we'd come up with. And this is going to be nearly impossible to see, but there's 2 ways that they will allow new structures in a river corridor. I think it might be easier to start on the right with the infill. So you've got an existing building in the river corridor, and if you go no more than 300 feet from that and then back to the river corridor boundary, which is on top there with kind of the waves, that is allowed. That infill area development is allowed. And on the left, there's this development called shadow area, where if you've got an existing primary structure or below ground utility or septic, there is also an acceptable area for putting in buildings, and that's going out no more than 50 feet and then back to the river corridor. So those would both be allowed.
Even with the adoption of those standards.
Yep, it's very much part of the standards. This is a little outdated, this number, I think, but this is the map of the ones that are lighter colored have some bylaws for river corridors or no adverse impact.
Which are in
special flood
compliance
hazard.
with this recommendation. And so that would qualify them for the reduced contribution in a disaster recovery, right?
Those that have this is a
Yeah.
combination, but those that have the river corridor functions, which I don't think, well, I don't have the legend here. There's 2 different colors in there. There's a yellow and there's a pink.
But
Let
the
me just
89
look at the-
communities listed, those are the ones that are in compliance who would qualify for that status, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking the yellow is river corridors, and that's really outdated because we have like 7 communities in the Rutland County that have river corridor protections now. So this map is.
That would be important to also include in any presentation to the public, the number of communities that have already adopted these in Rutland County, to give a comparison, so that we're not
Yeah.
just making this up on our own.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lovely picture.
Yep.
So, whoops.
Thanks, Barbara.
It just did that all by itself. Does that refresh your memories at all? We can get Kyle back. I think Kyle will be best if we ask him when we get into the nitty gritty of actually looking at the state has some proposed language for towns that don't have zoning. It's a standalone ordinance. It's pretty complicated. And some of the topics I just covered are just scratching the surface. And he is great at working through that and telling a town, that's okay. FEMA will accept that, everything in the state will accept that, or no, so he's great when we get down to the details.
Thanks. Nice question.
So I think if you're, we did a count, I was able to work with the people that I work with at the Regional Planning Commission to figure out how many structures are involved in the river corridor and the small streams. So there's 42 in the river corridor alone, but
42 properties,
structures,
42 structures.
yeah,
Within the town, just within Rutland town.
just within Rutland Town, and I would say almost, well, there's some that are exempt. We can't do anything with, we can't say you can't do that to the state or the feds, like, GMP's hydro facility here, or, where V-Trans is and DMV, they're definitely in the river corridor, if not the floodplain over there. So there's nothing we can do about that. But among the 42, I would say almost half are commercial buildings. And the other half, single family dwellings, something like that. A lot of them are along Business Route 4 for the commercial. So that's gonna be a factor for us with the outreach and trying to come up with a message and talk to these folks.
But if they already exist as they are now, they'd be grandfathered. It's just not for further development.
Yes, it's right.
That's important to say too.
Right. And they can do like that shadow development or that
Yep.
infill development.
Yep.
As long, just they can't go closer to the river than they are with what the state has come up with
Yep.
for
With
ordinance
expansion.
language.
Right,
Somebody, for instance, couldn't put a garage
right.
with their home, with their business that went farther, closer to
Exactly,
the river than it is now.
exactly. Could still be in the river corridor.
Yep.
But not closer to the river. So yeah, 42 in the river corridor, and there's 7 in the small stream buffer. And there's quite a few small streams that are mapped by the state that would be covered by this. And so there would be a 50-foot, buffer on the small streams. So no closer to the small streams than that 50-foot. And these are like on Cold River Road, single family dwelling, Lester Lane, Vermont Route 3, those are all single family dwelling. There's a water tower on Route 7 North. That's on a small stream. And then Perkins Road, Curtis Brook Road, and there's one on East Pittsford Road. And those are single family dwellings. So, those will be a tougher sell because, they're not on the river that's going to be flooding and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. They're feeding, the concept is they're feeding the rivers going through Rutland Town. So don't make it narrower, don't make it faster. More energy.
The term tough sell puzzles me. Tough sell to whom?
To those that we need to, the townspeople, we need their support for this, especially those who are the 42 and the 7, property owners who own structures. I think we'd want near total buy-in from those people, right?
Well,
In a,
it's,
in a
it's enough.
sense, yes, but their properties are at risk. And if they don't buy in and there's damage, then the town's responsibility increases.
But not for their property, that's their own, that's
Sorry?
their own issue.
So the financial advantages of River Corridor apply only to public assistance.
Right.
That comes from the
That's
feds
correct.
through the state.
Right.
So that's our roads and our bridges and the culverts that get ripped up and
But
that's.
our percentage rises if we don't have this regulation.
It stays where it is right now, that 12.5%.
And if we lose the benefit of another 5% contribution. Yeah. And what you're saying, if these people don't buy in, that perhaps it's not wise to enact these kind of regulations.
Or it's gonna be difficult.
Or it's gonna be difficult, right? There's the whole enforcement factor, who's going to be enforcing this? It's always a question. So, maybe they think, it doesn't really matter, but it would be good. It'd be good to explain this to people and to have them understand the concept.
Right.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with information. I don't disagree with public meetings. Maybe more than one. But in the end, do we have the responsibility to move forward on it, even though there is citizen opposition? And what I thought I heard you say was no. But if
Oh, we have the authority to move forward. What a lot of towns do that are considering river corridor ordinances is, yes, they do public meetings to answer questions, but initially they send out letters and saying, you will be affected. And try to explain as much as they can in a letter. So the people are aware. So,
Come to a meeting and hear more.
half the people read the letter, fewer than half come to the meeting, but they have been informed.
site visits,
Site visits such as,
going to an area where there are 4 or 5 and do a site visit and notify the people and
yep,
notify all 42 and say, we're gonna meet here and you'll get a better understanding of why and how and all that. I think.
yeah, it's a possibility.
I agree, it's gotta be a carefully thought out informational and preparation process.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe the next step, like for our next meeting, although the map guy at the Regional Planning Commission's busy, the next meeting or the meeting after that, we'll have a better map that visually shows us, not just a list like this, but visually shows us where these structures are. And we can cross-reference it with this and figure out, what those businesses are, who we need to talk to and that sort of thing. But I think just, maybe just gathering around the map with those structures clearly identified might give us some ideas on how, Kyle's not going to help us with that. He can tell us what other towns can. He's really good about going through the language. And I'm not sure we're quite there yet. I think we kind of need to wrap our heads around who is this going to affect and what might be the best campaign or, education we can do. Provided everyone's on board.
A 50-foot corridor could be a significant amount of someone's total property. I mean, it could be a lot.
Yeah, there's some properties up there, some structures that are already in the river corridor.
Yeah,
And yeah, and you know, really close to like East Creek and
And Otter Creek, if you think right just across from the old College of St. Joe's, stuff that's on the other side of the street, that's, I mean, there's not a lot of room behind those houses.
Right, but if the house, if the house already exists, it's not gonna apply to them. It's just for any future
But-
structure that would,
But to do anything else, it means they can't do
Yeah.
anything else.
well, yeah, if their property is that limited anyway, there's very little they could probably do. With it.
I think it's I think, hang on, that's what I say.
Yeah,
There's gonna be a lot of really, really angry people. You thought angry people came about the short-term ordinance, you wait. Because I mean, I think if any one of us sat here and said, our home's in the river corridor,
Yeah.
and we even thought, geez, I was gonna build a nice shed there. And we all of a sudden sat here and said, but you can't do that anymore. I think we'd all have a different tune. So I think it's gonna be it's gonna be a hard pill to swallow. And especially businesses who maybe thrive on the fact that they could expand. Or potentially thrive because they could expand, and we're gonna tell them that they really can't do that in the river corridor. They can only do it this side, but there's no logical place to do it that side. I just think we got a hell of a battle, but
We may, so what we should probably do is just get a map of all of the properties, see what the river corridor effect would be,
sure.
and then look at how much resistance there might possibly be.
yeah, we might
Because-
need maybe separate meetings.
Yeah.
with
Yep.
Businesses and
Yeah.
versus. the
But I think what
residential.
we need to do is either dedicate a work session for one of our meetings, or set aside a separate work session where we actually look at that. Maybe it's just a separate work session where we just look at that, look at a map, look at the properties that are identified, the 42 and 7, and then say, what does it look like the impact would be on this property? Okay, they're in the river corridor here, but they have this, this, and this where they could expand if they wanted, which would be very logical.
But again, as you see why people are saying, and they came in and they complained about control.
Yeah.
Essentially, what you're saying is the town's gonna control what they can do on their own property. And I'm not saying that I'm against it
Yeah.
at all. I'm just saying, I think we've got
A
a
lot
hell
of
of a battle,
pushback, yeah.
a lot of pushback, I think.
Are there any mitigating factors for elevation?
Yes.
There are.
Yeah, especially, yeah, there's the one that's new for special flood hazard areas. That's part of the river corridor language, the new river corridor language, which is new structures in the special flood hazard area need to be the 2 feet above the flooding level.
Well, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you can be 50 feet from a riverbank that has a very shallow slope.
Right.
You can be 50 feet from a riverbank and
height.
be 40 feet
Elevated.
above
Yeah.
up in the air,
And this is why,
which makes flooding, virtually impossible.
yeah.
Well, I'm like,
The FEMA, I wish the FEMA mapping was going to be available sooner. Because it's going to be much more, it's becoming better maps because it's going to be much higher resolution. It's going to be LiDAR, so instead of just like 2-dimensional stuff, it's going to be 3-dimensional. So you can see some of these special circumstances. Where it might be a ledge cliff, and the flood is, the building's not going anywhere.
Mm.
The water's never going to get that high or whatever. Too bad about the other side, but
so I think that the direction in which we should head, Barbara, is to do some exercise, regardless of the resolution of the maps that are not yet available. At least find out whose property it is, and find out, at least on a 2-dimensional map, where the river corridor is likely to impact those properties. And then that way we can at least prepare ourselves for this conversation. And if that's going to be 2 different presentations, one to business owners and one to individual residents, then at least we can start planning.
yeah, so I'll try to get that new mapping as soon as I can. Our next, Norm, just sec, our next meeting is
October something.
October 5th, probably not by then.
October what?
5.
5th. Yeah, I was promised can you give me till mid-October? So it
Yeah.
doesn't cut it.
And I'm not going to be able to make the October 5th meeting. I have a wedding in the family that's happening then, so I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
around.
We may not have a whole lot of business, that meeting. Norm,
This is an intriguing and a difficult exercise. I agree with Jerry 100%. I think we can make, if possible, our job easier the more information we get. And two things occurred to me as you were talking. One is if we could have one of the list of 41 total properties, the name, address, and description, some description of the business, just in a list to give to us so we know exactly what we're talking about. And second, and I don't know if this is possible, if there were area photos, I suspect much of this is concentrated and there are a few isolated, but I may be wrong. If we could have aerial photos of at least the majority of the concentrated properties, knowing where they are. And I don't know how easy that is to get. It may be impossible. It may be too expensive, but we'll be working from a much clearer base, a much better informed base. At least for me, I'm very literal, as you may have realized over the 7 or 8 years.
yeah, well, we can always go online and do some of
We can get,
Google, yeah.
the Google Maps and.
Yep.
And then drill down. Yeah,
but we need the, we'll need the, even to go to Google Maps or individually, we'll still need addresses.
we've got the addresses. And I got this from Marcia, Howard, and like for the commercial entities, we can get the names of those as well, right? These are E911 addresses
Yep.
that, you know, that the map people use to put the structures in. So we can cross-reference that to what's in the lister's office for that address, right? The name of the company and even the name of the individuals, because we want to send out letters.
I think if, you know, we have the information, at least of the business, it'll mean much more to us. So
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, let me work on fleshing out these lists, the 42 and the 7, get more information on those. Maybe we can look at that next time. And that will spur some ideas.
Robert?
Mm.
Would there be any value in our getting maybe a copy of what these statues look like in another community that doesn't have zoning, just to see if they're, I don't know, if there's wording that if it's described in a different way to soften it.
Yeah,
No idea what, just to see if there's
Yeah.
any value.
yeah. Mel Holly just did it earlier this year. So, yeah,
suggestion.
and they changed a few things with Kyle's help. And I'm not sure, Shrewsbury did it recently. But I think they have zoning. Check. Okay. Probably enough on that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, moving down to announcements and news. There's going to be another meeting with the owners of the Cortina. And this is the 21st, which is next Thursday. At 5:30, if anyone wants to attend, that'll be right here. A couple things on the agenda, but the first one is to meet with the owners again. And the select board met with
That's the
them
19th,
the 21st.
21st, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that a special select board meeting or what is? it?
Yes,
Yes. Individual meeting.
And the select board met with them before their meeting on Tuesday night for a half hour or so. And, you know, just came away with more questions. So, and not entirely happy with the answers that they were getting. The whole thing is under litigation, and I assume that's Act 250. Partly not, okay. The Cortina was paying the town for all of the extra police coverage
Yep.
and all that sort of stuff. That stopped when they stopped getting all the vouchers, you know, 100% of the,
Stop when they sold the property.
oh, okay, oh, that's right, that's right. So that was in June. Okay. In the middle of the voucher changes. And that's, so that's 22,500 a month flat rate that the town was getting. That it's not getting.
Why aren't they paying it? Because it was sold and they don't feel they should, or you're still working on how to go.
It's in litigation.
Be hard to pay $22,000 when you're getting 603,000 in payment a month.
I know.
Oh, yeah,
You're getting 603 in a month.
603,000 a
it's a
month
big bite.
for the 120 people. If you do the math to next April 1st, I think the state for 500 people is paying $24.5 million to house 500 people. You wonder who makes these rules. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, you know, some of it was free money, ARPA.
That's
Is it
fine.
free, Barbara?
Yeah.
Came from somewhere.
Come from somewhere, yeah.
It's never free. Never.
But will our taxes ever go down? No.
What's that?
Will our taxes ever go down? You know,
No.
it'll never get to that granular level, but
So that's about 3% of what their gross income is.
Crazy.
So
See what happens there.
yeah, so there's some,
if you're gonna spend that money, if the state is going to spend that much money on a program, they should probably plan the program in a way that it's meaningful, not placing a burden on the local municipalities to have to do police protection. I could say a lot about that, but I'll stop.
so that's called the settlement fund. So there's back payments that are due now and continuing payments. And we're just assuming they're thinking, the new owners are thinking, well, that was the previous owner's settlement fund agreement and not ours. So hence the litigation. So yeah, the 21st starts at 5:30. This road. And you know, the new owners, I mean, they're young and they're saying all the right things.
Yeah, they just haven't put their money where their mouth is, right?
So, a couple other things that have come across the transom. There is, in the works through Act 250, redevelopment of the College of St. Joseph campus, the housing section on the southwest side. We haven't gotten any notices that Mary Beth did, because she's an adjoining landowner, even though it's across the road. So,
I'm sorry, could you start that again? Cause I didn't follow it all.
yeah,
It's
so
I didn't understand the description of what's.
there are people lined up to redevelop the west campus there into housing. There's about 28 acres there. And
So is that the campus up above near Campbell Road, or?
it's with the mansion and like the buildings around the mansion, and then most of the old dormitories, I think, up there on the hill.
Slate Hill up behind it.
Yeah, the dormitories are not that far over.
No.
Isn't that
not-
Casellas?
There's a lot of property.
Yes, yeah, I don't know who. Oh, Heritage owns it now, Heritage Bank.
I don't think the intention is
Let's not speculate.
to redevelop, I believe, what's there.
So they're looking for us to subdivide and not, and use the buildings pretty much as is for housing. This is gonna be interesting. No construction or land disturbance is proposed. So, and I haven't seen a figure for how many housing units they think they're planning on putting in there.
Those are dorms.
Hmm?
I mean, besides, other than the house, those are dorms, aren't they?
I think they are.
Yeah.
No construction. That's what they're saying on Act 250.
No construction. Can't believe that, but
But because Rutland Town butts it.
We
should
haven't
have done it.
received anything. But Rutland Town residents are receiving all of the Act 250 correspondence, like Mary Beth.
I thought it was a subdivision permit and not an Act 250 permit for the Castleton, for the College of St. Joe property.
Going through Act 250.
So I didn't read it right. Okay.
Isn't it?
They'll sent the permits. I didn't.
You could be right, Norm. I just assumed all of this was. Well, there is Act 250, the Act 250 revised Act 250 application, the Act 250 application. So,
Thought the Act 250 had off Main Street and the subdivision was just the division of this property. I thought
yeah, I'm looking at the College of St. Joseph, so they've got. I think Act 50 is going to come into play in both of those projects. And Howard, you'd be glad to know they did change the address.
Because that address was really with the ice company. On the corner of Park and Route 7, that's their address, 165 and South Main Street. So, yeah. There's always been some confusion.
Yeah,
out there, but it needed to be right,
right.
especially if somebody with their GPS was going to the site, they're just not gonna get there. Gonna bring them to the ice company.
the catch.
And Bill, do you know, is that cleared Act 250, that project?
Which project?
The coffee, the Friendly's
I haven't received
restaurant?
anything on it yet. I don't know if they've even submitted it yet.
They tore it down today.
Did they?
Probably.
I think aren't they working on it? Am I thinking of something different?
That's
What
the
did I
car
see? What did the car wash? No, there's something tore down today.
Fire station.
Where did I see a building like missing that they were working on?
Did that happen today?
Oh, it's been, well, the last
it's
part of it
been-
came down Tuesday.
I just see it was tore down today.
Um,
There were excavators sitting there and it was missing.
well, demolition is the next thing on, for the coffee shop. They're taking the whole thing out. And well, we'll try to keep better tabs on that.
Yep.
And then, just briefly up on the storage units up on Route 7. No, wait a minute. This is 29 Old Route 4A in Rutland Town and West Rutland. There's a minor application into Act 250 to demolish the 2 storage buildings and install a new exterior sign and construct a new perimeter fence around the salvage yard property.
Rosenberger.
Oh,
Bill,
it's,
I know where I was.
it's, Copart now. Bought Rosenberg, it's Copart is that, yeah.
It's right down here.
So this is not storage units,
Fire.
just 2 storage.
Yeah, fire station's gone.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Guys,
It's missing. And I was thinking, I saw a building gone with excavators sitting there. They are doing
Oh.
something around the old Friendlies. So
We get
there's some machinery.
They should be getting ready to, but yeah,
And what's the construction schedule?
for the fire station, a year, we should be back in a year.
But it'll start
oh, like they're starting like this week, like they dug the slab up so they can start digging the foundation for the new building. So yeah, no, they wanna have it poured.
McKinley?
done.
McKinley.
They wanna have steel structure up before winter, so.
Yeah, it sounds like things are moving pretty quickly now, despite, how things have been the last few years.
5 days behind the schedule already. So. We'll see.
Well, that's the town administrator's viewpoint. To us, it's like,
No. That's the construction schedule from the architect.
okay,
So where is the equipment being housed?
A little here, a little there. Mostly
Hey.
at Northwood.
yeah, mostly in the, the highway department
Yeah.
building.
Oh, okay.
If you go up to Northwood Park, you see all the highway trucks outside, it's because our trucks are inside, so, oh, good.
Yeah. And they worked out the gate situations.
No discretion to it yet.
It's usually locked and,
At night.
Oh,
right,
More.
which is what most fires have.
It's, there is, we have the security worked out, yes.
Good thing. Okay, any other announcements? Anyone else? Okay, let's move down to the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of August 3rd.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Sherman.
Sorry, do you do both or just one? You do
I just
both?
want to do one because I think that there might be a discussion on it. I want to avoid the problem that happened last time with not enough people present, so that's why I chose to select the one.
Looks like everybody here. Oh, you weren't here.
I
Yeah.
wasn't,
So, yeah, so you can't vote, but you can.
but I can make a
motion.
motion. Wasn't planning to vote. I just wanted to get it moving along.
Hey, Bill, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So this is August 3rd.
Okay.
Second page, the Post Road Solar Project.
Okay.
Was, so number 4, pilot calculation. Oh. Right. Okay. Any other discussion? Questions? Okay, all in favor of approving the August 3rd minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have another set. We're still missing one for July, but we'll get there. August 17th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of August 17th.
I'll second again.
And even though this wasn't our meeting, let's just go ahead and
I like the way
Consider-
they spelled. What is it?
oh, I didn't notice that.
I don't get typos at all. I got that.
How could you, Bill?
They've been approved, so, the board approved. so
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
that-
we're
it's not
just,
that.
this is just a formality. And was there a motion? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so in second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I just have a question on the meaning of a sentence. It's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, little paragraph down. Also how the inspection process is handled in municipalities that do not depend on division of fire safety. I'm just trying to remember what that means.
We were talking about if there's like the city of Rutland.
Yep.
Does not depend on division of fire safety, they have building inspectors.
Oh,
They have
okay.
their own
That- yeah.
private inspectors.
Yeah, I remember there was some conversation about it, but I couldn't remember what it was. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, those in favor of approving the minutes that have already been approved by the select board for 8/17. Say aye, please.
I,
Opposed? Okay, anything else to come before the group? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
good, that's Sherman's.
Chairman moved and
I'll
second.
second.
There you go,
Okay.
Jerry.
My favorite part.
Been waiting for this.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.